Wenn ich heute nochmal bei Null starten müsste, um meine Expertenmarke, mein Expert-Branding und Positionierung auf- und auszubauen, dann würde ich mich definitiv für einen Kanal entscheiden und das ist Live-Video und Live-Streaming. Denn aus meiner Sicht ist das heute einer der schnellsten und effektivsten Wege, deine Marke auf- und auszubauen und deine Expertise sichtbar und erlebbar zu machen. Jetzt magst du vielleicht sagen, Martina, hey, du hast einen coolen Podcast, warum Live-Video? Ganz einfach, weil man beide Sachen sehr smart miteinander verbinden kann. Wie? Das verrate ich dir natürlich jetzt hier im Gespräch mit meinem heutigen Gast, mit Ian Anderson Gray. Er ist der internationale Top-Experte, wenn es ums Thema Live-Video und Livestreaming geht. Er hat seine Confident Live Marketing Academy, den gleichnamigen Podcast. Ja, er ist auch Podcaster und hat natürlich eine eigene Facebook-Live-Show. Ganz klar. Und er wird uns jetzt verraten, was ist hot, was ist top und was sollten wir vermeiden und einfach, wie können wir überhaupt gut mit einer Show starten? Und wenn wir schon eine haben, wie können wir sie noch besser machen? Und da er ein englischsprachiger Gast hier ist im Netzwerk, wird er natürlich auch noch hochoffiziell auf Englisch begrüßt für alle anderen, die eben auch von überall aus der Welt hier zuhören und zuschauen. Und deswegen, today's guest on my podcast show is Ian Anderson Gray. He is the absolutely go-to expert when it comes to live video and live streaming. He is the founder of the Confident Live Marketing Academy and of the Confident Live Marketing Podcast. And he's definitely one of the most sought after keynote speaker for events like Social Media Marketing World or on platforms like BBC World Service and Social Media Examiner. So please welcome Ian Anderson Gray. He will definitely know what to do, what's hot, what's not, and what we should avoid if we want to become really successful with our live video show. Let's get the show started. Bevor wir weitermachen, möchte ich von dir gerne wissen, wie es um deinen Expertenstatus steht. Wissen potenzielle Kunden, dass du die Nummer 1 bist, wenn es um dieses Thema geht, weiß die Presse, die Medien, dass man mit dir sprechen muss, wenn man einen Experten für ein Interview sucht. Ja, und vor allen Dingen zeigen deine Auftragsbücher deinen Expertenstatus, indem sie prall gefüllt sind. Wenn du bei 1 oder 2 Fragen sagst nein oder jein, dann ist vielleicht noch ein bisschen mehr Luft nach oben auf dem Weg zum begehrten Experten. Und genau dabei unterstütze ich dich, indem ich dir heute was mitgebracht habe. Hol dir doch einfach völlig kostenfrei mein Expert Branding Kickstart Kit. Da ist alles drin, was du brauchst für deinen Sprung in die Expertenliga. Es geht los mit meinem Workbook zum Thema Expertenpositionierung, mit meinen 50 Lieblingstools für ein starkes Expertenmarketing und natürlich habe ich dir auch den Expertenstatus-Test mit eingebaut, mit Impulsen, wie du deinen Expertenstatus weiter auf- und ausbaust. Und eine Überraschung habe ich auch noch reingepackt, aber die verrate ich dir jetzt noch nicht. Wenn sich das gut anhört und wenn du sagst, ja, das brauche ich will weiter an meinem Expertenstatus arbeiten, dann hol es dir ganz einfach, indem du auf den Link unter diesem Video klickst oder hier den Link eingeblendet siehst. Und ja, dann ab auf martine-fuchs.com/kit20 und schon mit einem Mausklick ist das Kit auf dem Weg zu dir. Und jetzt wieder zurück zur Show und viel Erfolg. Hello, Ian. So wonderful to have you finally here on my show. What happening? Hello.
Hello, Martina. I'm so excited to be here, finally getting it together. How long has it been? Let's not think about that too much.
No, we don't talk about it. It's a few years, but already a few years ago, I was looking. So I think the first approach we did in 2019, so only 2 years ago.
Okay, that's not so bad.
No, not so bad. You are definitely the go-to expert when it comes to live video and live streaming. You have built up your Confident Marketing Academy. So what was the weirdest situation ever so far in front of a camera for you? Did you have some weird situations?
It kind of depends what you mean by weird. I mean, there have been weird. There have been some excruciatingly painful ones as well when I've felt like a complete idiot in front of the camera and I've avoided it like the plague. You know, in many ways, I think I started off as the most reluctant live video guy in history. But that, I think, has allowed me all those things that I struggled with has helped me become who I am today, and allowed me to help my clients because I've gone through all of those things. So like, I mean, things like a frustrating thing, tech problems where there's been a lightning strike and a power cut, and
wow.
and then what else has happened? Internet's gone down halfway through, and I've forgotten what to say. Like, I've started off and I've got the wrong name of the show. So this is the confident. What is this show called? I've completely forgotten because I'm juggling too many things, or I forget to switch my microphone on. So yeah, there's been lots of things like that, and also, clients of mine have had some horrific stories, like they've forgotten. In fact, this happened to me. I forgot about this. I forgot to press the end broadcast button, and so I'm carry on talking with my guest, and we're still broadcasting live. And I didn't realize. Thankfully, we didn't say anything too rude or anything. But
that's good.
Yeah. So that's and in fact, actually, just the other day, because I was just saying to you before we started recording, I've just bought a new computer. So I've migrated most things over. Everything's pretty much working perfectly. But with the software that I use, on the I have a little countdown time at the beginning of my live shows. And on my old computer, both myself and my guest are muted. Not on the new computer. So we're talking away, thinking, so what are you drinking? Are you having a cup of tea? And it's very hot outside, and everyone can hear us on the live show.
That's great. That's fantastic. But I like it because that's human and that's life, you see?
Exactly. Yeah.
And normally we always try to be so perfect. And that's why I like to ask these questions to my guests. So because to show, hey, we are just humans. That's it. And mistakes happen.
Absolutely. I think the difference between me now and me 4 or 5 years ago is that now when that kind of thing happens, I'm able to laugh at it and actually think it's absolutely fine. And it's whereas I think if that happened 4 or 5 years ago, I would be so embarrassed and worried about what people thought of me. And so I think when you go on this confident journey, this mindset journey, when that's what you're looking for, you don't take yourself too seriously, because ultimately your audience want to see the human side of you and they want to laugh with you, not at you. There's a big difference. So that's important. And I'm very glad that I've got to that point now. Yeah,
super happy for you. I know, and that's the other fun part as well. You just mentioned it a little bit, that you call yourself an introvert. So you say, I'm more an introvert person, but I think it changed already, I would say. So we know each other for quite a time. And I would say this also increased a bit into a different state. But the fun thing, when you started, you definitely were very introvert. And so how and why did you choose exactly live video as your favorite topic as an introvert person? So that's...
Yeah, well, I want to make there's an important distinction here between being an introvert and being shy, because I used to be very shy as a kid. These days, I would definitely say I'm an introvert in that I like time by myself. I need that space. I get my energy from being in small groups or on my own. But that doesn't mean that I can't get in front of an audience and speak to them, whether it's in front of the camera or in person, whatever that is. And I think so my background is I trained as a professional classical singer, and I've always enjoyed, I get a buzz from getting in front of an audience and making a difference in people's lives. So with music, it was an emotional thing. I was singing something and I was hopefully getting some kind of reaction. With live video, I generally don't sing them, but I'm making a difference in people's lives. I'm communicating a message. And so I get a buzz from that. But there's still this, when I get in front of an audience or when I get in front of the camera, there is this nervous energy. And when I was a professional musician, I had to learn how to conquer that. And I did, and I learned how to do that. And actually using that adrenaline that's pumping through your veins, that nervousness, that a bit of fear almost, and you're turning that into excitement. That's the important thing. So you don't want to remain afraid. And so I got kind of hooked on that as a musician. And then when I got into marketing, I found when live video came about, I was interested in the technology side of it. So I was playing around with that. And then I kind of thought I was being asked to speak about live video at conferences, but I wasn't really going live because I was kind of scared of it. So I had to conquer my fears. And what I realized is my background in singing was so useful because it was a very similar skill set. I had to conquer those fears in front of the camera. But there's a really, really important thing that I realized. And this is one of the reasons why I absolutely love live video. And it's my dirty little secret, Martina. I am a recovering perfectionist. Okay.
Wonderful.
and I am also a procrastinator. And, so when it came to writing blogs, my blog changed my life. It opened up so many doors, but it took me hours and hours and hours to write those blog posts. Now with live video, I have to prepare for it. I have to plan, but basically once I've done that, I press the go live button, I go live, and then that's it. It's never going to be perfect. It's the perfect antidote to perfectionism because live video can't be perfect. So I'm not even going to bother trying. I'm going to obviously make it as good as I can, but it's not going to be perfect. And then from that, I can repurpose that into blog posts, into podcasts, into social media images. So that has allowed me to turn live video into a kind of a content repurposing powerhouse. And I love that. And it's just saved me from insanity. I will tell you that.
Wonderful. So you have your own show, of course. You have your own show. So how often are you going live?
Yeah, so I think we all need to find our own plan here and our own frequency of what's going to work. But for me, I go live twice per week, and I do that for a reason. So first of all, consistency is really, really important. Second of all is practice. You need to get better at this. And so the more often you go live, the more likely you are to make the mistakes early on and get them out of the way, learn from them. But there's another reason. And the big reason for me doing my live show is that I repurpose it into a podcast. And I said right from the start, back in May 2019, when I launched the Confident Live Marketing Show, that I was going to my podcast was going to come out every single Friday without fail. But the thing is, Martina, I don't know about you, but I actually quite like going on holiday. I like to have some time off.
Definitely.
So with the live show, I go live every 2 times per week, but sometimes, like coming up soon, I'm going to go away for 2 weeks. But that's fine because I've batched up the episodes to then allow me to have my podcast coming out every Friday, if that makes sense. So I have a buffer usually of about 7 or 8 weeks.
Wow. Okay.
Sometimes that goes down to 5 weeks if I have some time off. But generally speaking, I've got that buffer between me going live and then the podcast and the blog going out. And so that's why I do it that way.
So it's when you say you have you go live twice a week, so maybe Friday is also the publishing date for your podcast. Does this mean that what you produce it live as a live stream and it is maybe, I don't know, 2 weeks later on your podcast? Is it a little bit time difference in between?
Yeah, so there is. So I go live Tuesdays at 11 a.m. in the UK, and that's to reach my UK and European audience. And then on Thursday, I go live at 5 p.m. in the UK, so I can reach North American audiences as well. So I do that. Then we repurpose that. I can go into the whole process of how we repurpose it, but I then I download that, use a tool called Descript to change it into words. I also send it off to a podcast editor. And then usually that episode will then come out on a Friday, anywhere between 5 weeks later and 8 weeks later. So there is a time difference.
Okay.
And because of that, I mean, all of the content that I create is evergreen. It's really important that it is evergreen because I had a failed podcast. I think all successful people have a failed podcast. I don't know. That's what I like to think. Back in 2011, I had a podcast and it was called the Social Media News Show. And it was all about can you guess what it was about? It was about social media news. Can you guess? And the thing was, as soon as I published it, it was out of date. All the effort for that. So I make a big effort that all of my shows are evergreen. And so the fact that there is a 4 or 5 week difference, obviously doesn't really matter too much.
No, definitely not. And I think that's why I was asking you, because I find it really smart to create content which can be used on several different platforms as well. And I just also consider to change a little bit my personal concept and start to do more live and create my own live show and repurpose this content as well for my podcast show. So, and I think a lot of my listeners are also interested exactly in this. How can I produce more content with less stress and also use it really on several different platforms? So that's why I was asking you about exactly this question. So you are in the game. Really, you have been an early bird in when it comes to live streaming, live video, and these platforms or these topics have increased so much over the years. What would you say? What is hot now? What is working now? Comparing maybe to the early years. So what shall we not do again or shouldn't do? So what's on? What's hot?
Are you talking about the destinations that we go live to, say Facebook Live, YouTube Live? Or
yeah, we have now more platforms. We have more possibilities. So in the beginning, it was only Facebook. I remember we started on Facebook. So, and we could do, of course, YouTube Live. So they both were really close. But now we have LinkedIn. We can we have Periscope was the beginner. So we should say credits to Twitter or Periscope.
Well, exactly. Well, so actually, I mean, if we're going to go really far back before, there was actually Ustream was around. I think that was in the early 2000s. Okay. And then there was even Google Hangouts on Air. That was actually when I first dipped my toe. And I remember being asked to come on a show and I was absolutely petrified about it. It's ridiculous now thinking about it, but I was. But Facebook Live is when I got into it. It was back in 2016, I want to say. And I didn't have access to it because I was an Android user at the time. I was also, it's always comes out to the US first. So anyway, if you're anywhere else in the world, you have to wait. And I don't know about you, but I'm not very good at waiting. So I looked, I looked for a way to find how can I get access to this? So I didn't have an iPhone, but I found a way that you could broadcast from your computer to Facebook using software called OBS Studio. And that's actually what made me, I suppose, famous in the live video world, because that article went completely viral. It's had over 6.5 million page views, that article, since I launched it, which is completely nuts. Facebook Live is very much it's still today. It's one of the big ones, and it's still where I will broadcast to. There are lots of innovations within Facebook Live. You can go live to your profile, to your page, to your group, to your event. There are things like polls, and you can ask questions. There's some interactivity that you can have as well. YouTube Live is still a thing. LinkedIn Live has been around probably around 2 years now. I forget when it now.
And I was wondering, because I know you got a lot of behind the scenes information because you are so well known in this scene. So because we are still a little bit, how shall I say, angry because it's so picky. LinkedIn is so picky. I would love to stream, but still I don't have the permission to do it. And it's really annoying a little bit. So why are they so picky? Any news?
Well, it's still in beta, if I'm allowed to pronounce it that way, or beta. And it's I don't know when it's going to come out, but my advice to people is to apply again. Applying, in fact, especially at the moment, because I know a lot of people who are applying at the moment and are getting it.
Ooh.
So I know people that have applied 4 or 5 times, and on the 5th time, they've actually got it. So don't despair. Originally, they weren't really looking for marketers. They were looking for kind of more, how do I put this? More interesting people, but marketers are interesting. But they were looking for
people who don't sell. Let's say it straight. They don't want to have people who sell. They want.
So they were looking for plumbers and builders and dentists, maybe. Yeah. And they, for example, one of the rules is they don't actually want you to talk about LinkedIn Live on LinkedIn Live. They actually state that on their rules. So but basically things have changed now. It's become a lot more open. So I would suggest apply again. Do not despair. There are a few little things to think about though with LinkedIn that make it different to other channels. For example, they want you to broadcast for at least 10 minutes. So if your video is under 10, then they ask you to just do that as a pre-recorded video. So they want it to be over 10. The other thing is, unlike Facebook Live and YouTube Live to a point, you can't go live from your smartphone. It has to be from your computer. On YouTube Live, you can't. No one does this, but you can technically go live from your phone if you have over 1,000 followers, just as a point. But so that's one thing with LinkedIn. But the second thing, the technical requirement is you have to use a third-party tool to go live to LinkedIn Live. You can't just go to LinkedIn and go live from there. You have to use a tool like Restream or Ecamm Live or whatever, something like that will allow you to broadcast to there. So that's the other thing to think about. It's a little bit more involved, but not in a scary way. Yeah. So that's LinkedIn Live. And then there are others. Periscope is technically no more. It's kind of Twitter Live, I suppose. There are other places. There's Twitch, Mixcloud. There are lots of places. And one thing that you can do, you've been able to do this for a while, but one thing that is something that I think is worth looking at is multi-streaming. So not just going live to one place, but going live to lots. So you can go live to Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube.
Do you recommend this? Because that was one of my questions to you. So when we do multi-streaming, because I was thinking, okay, maybe every platform has its own rules, and maybe you have there some complications where you say, okay, maybe it would be better if you want to build your brand, if you want to get new clients, that you maybe consider to put on own show on Facebook or LinkedIn, because the people are not always similar on these platforms. But I also, for myself, I use multi-streaming and I like it very much so that I can go crossover. But what do you think about this point?
Well, if you are asking that question, I have a lot of faith in you. I think that's great because you are thinking about it. You're not just going live everywhere because you can and because you're trying to reach as many people as possible, although that's not necessarily a bad reason. But so multi-streaming is something, you don't have to do it. I think to begin with, when you're first starting out with live video, I would recommend going live to one place. Keep things simple because you've only got one place to go live to and you're focusing on that audience. But I think for most of us, our audience on Facebook and on LinkedIn and on YouTube, if we are being consistent with the kind of content that we're creating, yes, there will be a difference, but I don't think that's a barrier from you going live to all those places with a regular show. So with my Confident Live Marketing show, I go live to all those places and the audience are very similar. But things have changed. If we were having this conversation 3 years ago, I would probably not recommend that people multi-stream. But these days, it's a lot easier. So back in 3 years ago, you were going live to all these different places, but you couldn't actually see the conversations, the messages from all those different channels. So they were talking to you, but you couldn't see them. Whereas now with a tool like Restream, you can see the comments from LinkedIn, from YouTube, from Facebook, and you can actually highlight them on the screen, which is great. And community is so important. So these days, it's a lot easier, and I would definitely consider that. There are there are exceptions to the rule, of course. For example, I don't really use Twitch very often, but Twitch is kind of a slightly different community. The other thing to think about is how you can, it's more about how you can, if you're going live to all these different places at the same time, you might get confused with all the technology side of things. So just be careful with that because it can be a bit confusing. But I think for most people, it's absolutely fine.
Yeah. I'm an Ecamm user, so that's my favorite tool, and I have also Restream as my multi-channel platform, multi-streaming platform, and I think it's really quite intuitive and super simple. So it was really not easy, not in any way technically really stressful. So it's a super connection, and it works really fantastic. So if somebody listens, I would really recommend, if you're a Mac user. So for Ecamm, you still have to be a Mac user, I guess. Yes. And if you are not, I think you could also use like a tool like Restream. Must work on Word on a
on a PC.
as well.
Restream. So Restream. So Ecamm and Restream work perfectly together. So you go live on Ecamm, that sends it to Restream and then streams it all out. We won't get too technical, but Restream on its own has Restream Studio. So you just go or log onto your browser and you go live there. And so that works on Mac and PC as well. If you're a PC user and you're a bit geeky, then you could use something like OBS Studio or vMix. vMix is PC only, but Mac, Ecamm Live all the way.
Yeah, perfect. So when we are thinking about setting up our own live show, for instance, so I would say in the last years, live streaming now, everybody knows, okay, live video is the hot thing to do. Would you say that there's still space enough for building up a good live show?
Oh, absolutely. For so many different reasons. It's a great way, as I said before, to create content quickly and easily once you've set all the tech up and have a good plan. So there's that side of things. It's also great for community building and also great for your audience to get more access to you as well, because human, as we were talking about before, is so important. So whether you are a solopreneur or whether you are running a bigger business, we want the human side of our businesses to be put forwards. And so live video is absolutely vital for that. But even if it's not to do with the audience, it's think about the content side of things. It's a great way to create that content quickly and easily. And so I recommend it to everyone from that point of view.
And I must say, or I must add that for me, it's the fastest and strongest possibility to build your brand nowadays.
Yes.
Because people really, they see you, they hear you. And I always say people must feel you, they must see you, they must see how you act, how you speak, everything. And for this reason, if I would start now and would have nothing at all done in marketing, visibility, communication, I definitely would say, okay, if I only can choose one thing, I definitely would go for live streaming or live video show, because definitely for me, it's the fastest way to build your brand online nowadays. So we want to start a show. We are ready to go. So what, maybe hurdles we have to take, or what are mistakes we should avoid? So do you have a little 5-step process for us? Or we say, okay, this is step 1, step 2, step 3.
I do have a 5-step process, but
really?
that's once you've got started. So that's my 5 Ps formula, which I'll share in a minute. But before we get to that point, you need to make sure that you've got the building blocks. And there's 2 things really. One of them is kind of to do with the 5 Ps, which I'll show in a minute. But the first thing I think you need to get sorted is the basic tech. Don't let the tech get in the way, and don't try to be a perfectionist here. I'm a massive believer in bootstrapping your live video studio. So start simply. But the most important thing is your computer. And I've had lots of tech problems recently, and I just decided to bite the bullet and get an M1 Mac. So I've got a Mac Mini that has just solved so many problems. Do I look less stressed than maybe I did last time? Because I feel a lot less stressed because of that. So get a computer like an M1 Mac or a decent PC. That's the first thing. Second thing I think is important is good internet. Your internet speed needs to be reliable. And then the third thing is a decent microphone. So a microphone that's going to pick you up. Now, you might notice I've not actually mentioned camera. Now, that's not to say cameras aren't important. They are, but it's less important than the sound and also the quality of your computer and your internet. So that's the first thing, the tech. And then the second thing is planning. And I spent lots and lots of time creating the plan of my live show and podcast. And without that plan, I would not have been able to be consistent. So I set out in that plan my audience, who my audience was going to be, my promise to them, and coming up with 3 themes. So I knew that my show was going to be for helping entrepreneurs to level up their impact, authority, and profits using confident live video. But I came up with 3 themes that was going to help me be really focused on the different types of content that I was going to create. So for me, it's the live video tech and gear, the live video confidence and fear, and then the live video content marketing sphere. I hope you're impressed they rhyme. But
absolutely.
It's always got to rhyme. So, but that meant that I find it really easy to come up with topics because I just think, oh, well, which theme haven't we done much of? Okay, we haven't done much on tech and gear. Let's get somebody from Elgato to come on the show to talk about their new webcam or something. So it's a lot easier to come up with guest ideas. So that's the preliminary things that you need to think about. And then we get on to the 5 Ps of live video. So the first thing we've kind of covered is planning. Planning the whole show, but planning each episode is really important. Then we get on to, well, you're going live next Tuesday, so you need to let people know about it, don't you? You need to pre-promote it. So that's the second P, is pre-promotion. Third one is the production. The day has come, you need to produce that. And then it's at that point when people press the end broadcast button that they go and have an afternoon nap, don't they? And unfortunately, that is not what you need to do. You need to then look at the post promotion, because there are actually 2 or 3 types of audiences on your live shows. There's the people watching you live, but there are the people from the future who are the replay audience. And if you're repurposing it into a podcast, you've got your podcast listeners. So you need to think about your replay viewers and post promote it. And then the final thing is repurposing that into a podcast, into a blog, into social media images, into an infographic. I could go on and on and on. So that's what the 5 Ps are.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much. So I have a question about your repurposing. So when you go live and you say, okay, this will become as well a podcast later on. So do you have I think, who is the woman, she did the great book, 10X Content.
Oh, Amy Woods.
Amy Woods. Yes.
Yeah.
We know her from, I know her from Upreneur Summit, and I know you know her very well. And this book is great. And she's fantastic with her ideas, how to repurpose your content. And Amy was giving this smart tip that you say, okay, if you want to make a podcast out of your show or so on, so you have your intro, you say hello and make your reference and who I am. And then she said, and then make really a clear break for a few seconds. And then you start with the topic of the week or of the day. And then you do a clear outro so that you can cut the start and the end so that you have really a single piece of content in the middle. Are you doing it like this as well?
Yes. So there's a number of ways you can do it. That's pretty much the way I do it. So I start off with a countdown timer, and that is just to give people time to get on to watch the show. And so that's what we do. Then we have a little live segment. So I have an informal chat on my own or with my guest. We have a kind of fun with the people watching. So we ask them questions. That kind of content is great for live, but it doesn't really work so well for replay audiences, or certainly the podcast. People get a bit bored with that if they're watching the replay. So then what I do is I then play a short intro video, and then I will then say, hello, my name's Ian Anderson-Gray, and in this show, we're talking about bananas and apples and my favorite fruit, or something like that. And then I'll play the intro, and we'll get on with the show. So then once we've finished, I'll then go back into Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and I will trim that beginning off, which you can do on all those channels. And also I'll take that part of the video and download the audio and make that into a podcast. I'll just put an intro and outro on that, and that's pretty much it. So it's very much down to how you structure it. There are other ways. So a friend of mine, Jeff C, he actually does the live segment at the end. So they get straight on with it right at the start, and then they press stop for the recording of the podcast, and then they have a little Q&A at the end for live viewers, and they do it that way. So there's a number of ways you can do it.
Oh, very, very smart. Fantastic. So any last tips on what we really should avoid, or I say that could be maybe become a problem, or you shouldn't do that?
Avoid perfectionism at all costs. So I think you should absolutely watch your live shows afterwards and learn from your mistakes. But perfectionism is never going to happen. It's really about tweaking over time. So you should be constantly tweaking, but don't start comparing yourself with others. Don't look at my setup and think, oh, I could never do it. I don't have as nice a microphone as Ian's. The thing is, I used to do this all the time. I used to look at other people's live shows and think, oh, well, I'm just no good because my backdrop isn't any good. And once you get down that way of thinking, you will stop going live. So my biggest advice really is get over yourself. Stop thinking about yourself, thinking about your audience. They are the most important person that you should be thinking about. Your audience first, your guest second, and guess what? You're bottom of the pile. It's a bit of tough love, but it is important. And I needed to get over myself because I didn't go live for a whole month because I was worried about my background not good enough. And I bet that the 99.9% of my audience couldn't care less about my background. They were interested in what I was going to say. And so don't do that.
Wonderful. That was fantastic. That's the best closure ever. So stop being too perfect and get out of your way. That's perfect. Thank you so much, Ian. Wonderful. Tons of value bombs. Thanks for sharing it with us. So, and I'm super sure because people definitely want to check out where they can find you, where they can hear your show. So please tell us where we shall go after this interview.
Well, do check out my Confident Live Marketing podcast that you can find that at iag.me/podcast. And that's my website as well, iag.me. I've got loads of blog posts and I've got courses and all that kind of stuff at that website as well. So it'd be great to connect.
Definitely. And I will definitely link all the important links in the show notes of this episode. So don't worry, you won't miss a thing. Ian, again, thanks a ton for being here on my show and sharing so many valuable things with us. Thanks a lot.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Martina.
Na, das war doch wohl jetzt wirklich ein absolutes Feuerwerk an Impulsen von unseren lieben Ian. Und in diesem Sinne hoffe ich natürlich, dass du die Zeit hattest, vielleicht dir den ein oder anderen Tipp sogar zu notieren. Wenn nicht, dann einfach auf den Replay-Knopf drücken, damit du hier nichts versäumst. Und ich hoffe, das hat dir auch Mut gemacht und Lust gemacht, deine eigene Live-Show zu starten. Solltest du noch keine haben. Und wenn du schon eine am Laufen hast, ja, dann hast du vielleicht jetzt nochmal den ein oder anderen spannenden Tipp bekommen, wie du auch aus deinen Live-Videos mehr machen kannst. Ja, und wenn du überhaupt noch mehr wissen willst rund um das Thema, beziehungsweise wo du Ian finden kannst, dann ab in die Shownotes unter martina-fuchs.com/161. Da findest du dann alle Informationen rund um Ian Anderson-Gray, wo du ihn erreichen kannst, wie du ihn finden kannst. Du findest natürlich auch noch weitere wichtige Podcast-Episoden zum Reinhören und kannst dir mein Expert Branding Kit holen. Alles dazu in den Shownotes. Und jetzt sage ich natürlich wie immer, smart sein, geschmeidig bleiben und feiere die Erfolge, die du verdienst. Und wenn du dieser Podcast-Episode oder wenn du das gerade live auf YouTube siehst, noch ein paar Sterne hinterlassen möchtest, dann tu das jetzt. Ich freue mich drüber und teile es fleißig in deinem Netzwerk. Ich danke dir dafür. Alles Liebe. Bis nächste Woche. Deine Martina.